بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين الحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Hope everyone's good. And inshallah we'll begin now our third lesson, Tawhid Shirk and Bid'ah. Alhamdulillah, we've covered quite a lot so far. Just looking at what we did last time, we looked at Tawheed in Lordship, in essence, in creation, and in divinity. So essence and creation came under Lordship, right? That in terms of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, in Lordship, this is the belief that Allah alone is the creator and sustainer of everything. That any belief that attributes divine powers or qualities to anyone else, that's shirk. And then there's two things within that, two aspects, the essence and the creation. So likewise, if someone happens to attribute something towards someone else other than Allah, in essence and creation, it is shirk. And then we looked at divinity. And in this aspect, there were four things: worship, power, supplication, and knowledge. And we learned how this aspect mainly is around worshipping Allah alone. And we learned about how the idolaters of Mecca, that they believed in Allah, or they had a theological understanding that God exists, rather, that He exists, but they're the shirk. And the lesson that we had stressed on one thing, that we have to differentiate between literal and figurative meanings, and how attributing certain things to prophets or saints or the righteous, for example, is acceptable as long as they are seen as granted by Allah and is not intrinsic to them themselves. Doing so would be shirk. Today, inshallah, we continue and we look at Tawheed and Shirk in the names and attributes of Allah, sanctification, vows, oaths, and injunctions. So there's quite a bit to do. And then Bid'ah, we will look at the basis of praiseworthy Bid'ah. How is it that we have come to that conclusion? And look at the concept of ibaha, permissibility, and the categorizations of Bid'ah. Inshallah. Okay, so these are the three aspects that we're looking at today. The oneness in names and attributes. This has within it three different segments: names, attributes, actions. And then the sanctities is sanctifications, vows, and oaths. And then within injunctions, we have rulings and legal rulings. So existential rulings and legal rulings. And then inshallah, next week, we're going to look at worship and veneration in more detail. Inshallah. Okay, so let's look at these elements today. So oneness in names and attributes. This is to believe that the names and attributes that are exclusive to Allah must be affirmed for Him alone, no one else. And these attributes, they're limitless, they're endless, and they're essential. Allah is a necessary being. The universe is contingent on Him, right? And all of these things are exclusive attributes. And there's several verses in the Quran that show us these attributes, like these listed here, for example. These verses, they speak about sustenance. Allah is the one who gives sustenance. They speak about how Allah is all-hearing, all-seeing. They speak about how Allah brings life from death, how He gives death to life, how he brings somebody back to life, how he manages our affairs, how he initiates creation. Kun fayakun. Say be, and it is. And then repeating creation, constantly creating. Allahu, He is Badi'us samawati wal ard. He is the originator, and He keeps doing that. He is describing exclusive attributes. Yeah? This is with a stamp on it. It's exclusive. These attributes, they can't be what? They can't be validated for anyone else or anything else. That would be what? Shirk. But we got to remember one thing. They're all common attributes, and they can be used for creation. They can be common attributes for things that meet. How so? Let's look at examples. For example, Allah calls Himself Ar-Rahman. Calls Himself Ar-Rahman. Allah is the most compassionate, the most loving, Ar-Rahman, the most merciful. It includes all of these meanings, various meanings within Rahman, and it's immediate. That mercy is immediate. Rahim, the scholars have said, the sifa of Rahim is in the next world. Some say that Ar-Rahman is in this world. Rahim, though, Allah has also used not only for Himself, but for the Prophet ﷺ, that He is Rahim as well. Ar-Ra'uf Ar-Rahim. Allah uses it for Himself and the Prophet ﷺ. وَبِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ رَؤُوفُ Ar-Rahim. That He is Ra'uf, He has clemency, He has kindness, He has mercy on the believers. And then Allah also uses Al-Wali, guardian, friend for Himself. Allahu waliyyu alladhina amanu. Allah is the wali of those who believe. But He also uses it for the Prophet ﷺ and the believers. The same word. Yeah. So there's a commonality in the names, but their essence, their modality, their nature is different. So Allah also says He is Shaheed, Shahida, and He is a witness. He uses it also for the Prophet ﷺ. He is a witness. Allah also uses Sami' al-Basir, who was Sami' al-Basir. Like you read throughout the Quran, He uses that for Himself. He also uses it for creation. Same words. He uses Al-Kareem, that He is generous. He uses the same word to describe who? Himself and the Prophet ﷺ. Himself and the Prophet ﷺ. He uses the word Shakur, grateful. He uses it for Himself. He uses it also, for example, for the Prophet Nuh, same word, Shakur. Min ibadi ash-shukur. So there's a commonality. And in order to claim shirk, then the attribute, it must be one that is exclusive to Allah. If not, then it has to be distinguished, whether that word that's being used, or that attribute that's being used, or that name that's being used, or that's being attributed to that thing, or to that person, whether it is real or is figurative. We've got to differentiate between them. So when would it be shirk? It would be shirk when you associate and co-sharing in His exclusive names. That's shirk. You can see the references that I'm leaving in this. And calling others with the same names, that is also shirk. To call others with the same names. Likewise, inventing names for Allah, calling Him with names. Right? We can praise Allah. We can praise Him. We can start saying, Ya Allah, you're the best. You're making dua, you praise Him. But we can't start making names for Him. Right? Like we do nicknames for ourselves, and we like to do shortcuts in our names. We can't do that with Allah. Right? That's against Sharia. What's one of the main reasons? We're deficient and we're limited. We can't give him a name that would be sufficient, that would be limitless, because we ourselves are deficient and we ourselves are limited. Whatever we can come up with, it will never be matching his essence, his being, his nature, his modality, never. And that is not allowed to do. And now again, the common attributes, and emphasizing this, when used with Allah, it has a different meaning. When used with Allah, it has a different meaning, and it's specific only for Allah. The same word, like for example, Ameen, trustworthy, Qawi, powerful, they might be used as common attributes. But when they're going to be used for Allah, they're not the same. Which is why the first step is always to look at whether something is exclusive or not. Divine attributes have a clear, fixed meaning. Their meanings are distinct. Their semantic applications, likewise, they have a special significance. It's completely different. Rahman, Rahim, as we mentioned before. One's divine, one's common. The next element is his actions. So oneness in actions is affirming that those actions are exclusive to Allah and for Allah alone. As in the actions of giving life to creation, death, and existence. And there's several verses that describe this. To describe this, entire these actions of Allah that are exclusive to Him. All of these actions, no one else can do it. Like, for example, the altering of the day and the night, the bringing about of the wind, right? The rain, all these things. You can say, oh, well, but people are doing now artificial rain. People are doing, uh, they're bringing about certain temperatures, certain lights, certain things, and they're replicating nature. It's not the same, is it? The universe and the actions taking place within it and around it is all ultimately executed by Allah. Everything happens with His leave. And remember again about exclusive and non-exclusive. If these actions are exclusive to Allah, they can't be affirmed for anyone else. There's two possibilities. One, that this action, it matches the creator and the creation. As in there's some sort of commonality. It's not shirk. Or it matches creation in that it can't be affirmed for Allah. To do that would be shirk. For example, like Mawlid. It's birth. It's a celebration of birth. Some people say it's shirk to do. But how is it shirk to do when it's celebrating a birth? Allah has no birth. Right? It's a common thing for creation. It can never be affirmed for Allah, something like, or intercession. Why would Allah want to intercede? To claim so would be a shirk. Intermediation. Why would Allah want to do the same thing, have a means for something? He's created means for us, not for himself. Now, if someone is restored to health, for example, or relieved of trouble, or given a child, through the blessings of Allah, through a dua, the dua of a prophet, dua of a saint, pious person, it's not shirk. It's a means. For us, it's a means. Allah isn't the one who has means. He doesn't require it. The real doer is Allah alone. And He can bestow anything and remove anything that He likes. Is all He's doing. And this is not violating oneness in actions. But to affirm those exclusive attributes like mentioned in the ayat in the Quran, creation, right? To bring altering the day and night, all these types of things, to attribute actions like that to someone else's is shirk. You've got to violate an exclusive attribute with evidence from the Quran and Sunnah. That's based on what? Modality, expression, mode, or experience, and nature. As in, you're saying that person's inherent qualities are like that, their features are like that, their characters like that. It's not about number, quantity, or size of the action or its timing. Nothing to do with that. It's the pure nature of it. Here's a possible objection. There's no generals or particulars, right? There's no exclusive or common. It's not mentioned in the Quran. How can you start mentioning? How can you say that there's exclusive attributes and there's common attributes when Allah has not done that? But we've seen that the same words are used for Allah and the Prophet and creation. What we see through that is a restriction of what's general and what's particular and established through the Quran. It's very clear. Shaheed for Allah, Shaheed for the Prophet. Ra'uf al-Rahim for Allah, Ra'uf al-Rahim for the Prophet. Sami' al-Basir for Allah and for creation. One's general, i.e., for the Prophet, for the creation, right? But one's particular, one's exclusive, and that's for Allah. There can never be one and the same. To do that would be shirk. Okay, so we've been through now names, and we've been through actions. The next one is sanctifications, vows, and oaths. Allah has declared certain sites, certain months, sacrificial animals as His signs. They're called the sha'air Allah. Sha'air. The signs of Allah. These have, for us as believers, an obligation on them that we have to revere them, we have to respect them. There's commands and prohibitions in the Quran on that. And this is where we see the discussion on oneness in prohibitions, on sanctifications, tahrimat, vows, as in you have what's called nadhr or nudhur, and then oaths, half. You call it half. Okay? This is mentioned several places in the Quran. Example, Safa and Marwa. Inna Safa wal Marwata min sha'air Allah. The Safa and Marwa are from the signs of Allah. And then the holy months, the 4 sacred months. And then prohibitions in those sacred months and about sacrificial animals. And these verses, they explain veneration of these sacred signs. And not doing that is disbelief. Okay? For example, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, right at the start of Surah Al-Ma'idah, O believers, do not denigrate the signs of Allah, nor the sacred and venerable months, as in Dhul Qa'dah, Hijjah, Muharram, Rajab, right? And nor the sacrificial animals sent to the sacred house, the Kaaba, nor the animals brought to Mecca with the ritual straps on their necks. Do not violate the sanctity of life, property, honor, and dignity of those restoring to the sacred house, the Kaaba. Okay, so this ayah, it's a long ayah. But in this, we see obligations of reverence, the months, the signs of Allah, the animals, the Kaaba. Another ayah in Surah Hajj. This is the command. And whoever venerates, whoever respects the signs of Allah, whoever honors the signs of Allah, those living beings, shrines, monumental sites, the commands, the prescribed duties, known, all these things. Okay? In brackets is just an explanation. This veneration is the mindfulness of the heart. It's the God-wariness of the heart. It's the God consciousness of the heart. It's the taqwa of the heart. Allah says to respect the signs of Allah is the taqwa of the heart. And only those whose hearts have been blessed with the fear of God venerate these signs, in other words. So not only this, but those who do have reverence for the signs of Allah, they have piety of the heart. They have piety of the heart. If the Kaaba, if the months, if the sites are sanctified and require veneration, if veneration leads to taqwa of the heart, why are we not venerating all His signs? The Quran, for example, not placing it on the floor, using it disrespectfully, feet towards the Quran. Isn't the Quran a sign of Allah? Isn't it His word? Or any Islamic book, sacred knowledge, venerating His Prophet, he is a great sign of Allah. Venerating him because he is a sign of Him is one of the greatest blessings. Feet towards the Qibla. Are you not going to venerate the Kaaba? Feet towards parents. On the not his sign. Didn't Allah connect parents to his own worship in the same verse, right next to his name? In a high station. High station. Feet towards teachers, elders. Didn't the Prophet ﷺ say the best amongst you are those with the best manners? I mean, look at these images. You can see here, Tahir is laughing. But you can see how people are with the Quran. This woman, Ustada Sahaba, she's got Quran there underneath and got a laptop over it. This guy here is teaching Quran, is relaxed there. This guy has got his head on a rail where you put the Quran on top of. Right? This guy is, I don't know, I'm not going to even say where he has it. Right? So, and then the other guy's got his feet above Quran. These are things of adab. Right? And these are really important. Allah has asked us to venerate his signs. And if one believes that if some place or animal is to be revered in the same manner, same degree as the Kaaba, Masjid al-Nabawi, I'm going to include that in it, sacrifice of animals and other signs to the same level, like Allah has said, that's shirk. Mecca and Medina actually are both sanctuaries made so by the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi and the Prophet sallallahu respectfully. Both respectively, they have done so, as mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah. Ibrahim alayhi declared Mecca as a sanctuary, inviolable sanctuary, and this made it obligatory to respect it. And it actually is shirk to defile these sanctuaries. And the Prophet ﷺ said Ibrahim alayhi did this, and he would do it too for Medina. And this is hadith in Muslim. And if anyone declares some city sacred in the same way and frames rules and regulations for that, and then its sanctification, its reverence, then that would be shirk as well. Right? That would be shirk as well. Aqsa is also a sanctified place. Yeah? Okay. It is shirk for someone other than Allah, though. This is important. It's shirk for someone other than Allah to do that, to affirm sacredness and to establish an inviolability for things. The Quran shows how, for example, the mushrikun in Mecca, they used to specify certain crops and cattle in the name of their gods. Allata, wal Manata, wal Hubal, wal Uzza. Right? All of these dudes. Right? They declared crops prohibited in their name. And Allah warned them about this. According to their concept, these cattle and these crops are prohibited. None can eat them except the one whom we wish. And there's certain cattle whose backs are forbidden, for example, to ride. There's cattle, that people don't want to pronounce the name of Allah, right? And Allah says this is a lie against Allah. Soon He'll punish them because they fabricated things. So that's wrong. Sanctity for signs of Allah. What we're talking about here is something that is coming directly from Allah. We're told to refrain from violating them because they're made sanctified. For example, hunting, fighting. We can't do that in the sacred months. The Quran mentions so. The animals are brought to Mecca. The sites, Mecca, Medina, the Kaaba, right? The places. And to do like for like, and that we just start saying, yeah, this place is like this and this place is like this, that would be shirk. Now, there's a difference between reverence and sanctification. There's a difference between these things. Ihtiram, as in reverence, is not prohibited. Sanctification, tahreem of others, is prohibited. Like the mushriks of Mecca did, their idols and animals. Reverence is an obligation, but sanctification is the right of Allah and only Allah's. Reverence for something associated with the prophets and saints is not prohibited as reverence. And Sanctification, they're separate things. So blessed days and sites associated with the prophets and the saints, for example, that's proven from the Quran. There's many things for that. For example, the reverence for the day of Adam and his creation. Allah mentions his creation. And it's mentioned educating us about honoring and revering prophethood and how Iblis rejected that, how he became a disbeliever because of that reason. Reverence for the day of the salvation of Nuh, right? The day of 10th of Muharram, as we see in the Musnad, the hadith when the Prophet ﷺ and the Jews were fasting, and the Prophet ﷺ, we have more right to this, right? Fasting. Reverence for the day in which the kiswa, the cloth, was placed over the Kaaba. On the 10th of Muharram, hadith in Bukhari, this was a practice they used to do on the 10th of Muharram. They used to put the kiswa over the Kaaba out of reverence. Huh? Reverence for the birth of Yahya alayhi salam. This is mentioned in the Quran. The reverence for the birth of Musa alayhi salam. His birth is mentioned in the Quran. Right? A reverence for the birth of Maryam alayhi salam also mentioned. The birth of Isa alayhi salam also mentioned. The birthplace of Isa as well mentioned in Hadith is revered. The day where the table spread came, Al-Ma'idah, and when it came, that was revered day as well. The birth of the Prophet ﷺ is revered too. The miracles that took place on it, the honors that were granted on that day. And Surah Al-Balad swears an oath by the city in which he was born. It swears an oath by his birth. Huh? The Prophet ﷺ even specified the reverence of the day of his own birth, Mondays, right? In Sahih Muslim, that he was born on a Monday, that he would fast on a Monday because of his birth. Or the other hadith where he arranged a feast. He arranged a feast because the day of his birth. Also, he did an aqiqah, and Bayhaqi did a hadith because of his birth. And then the day when today I have perfected for you your religion was revealed was also revealed. It was a Friday and it was a day of Arafah. There's a hadith in Bukhari where Sayyidina Umar was asked about it, and he was asked about the day and how they celebrate that day. And he mentioned it was a Friday and it was Arafah. And then it was 2 days of significance. These hadith are available, but we don't have time to go through them. But these examples and these verses, they show us the position of reverence in the deen, that it has a place and is considered an obligation in Sharia. And all these, they're not exclusive, but they're elements of respect. And because they're connected to Allah. They're connected to Allah. That's why. And then we have oneness in vows. Oneness in vows. So now what's a vow? What's a nadhr? A nadhr is an exclusive right for Allah and Him alone again. But this is worship. This is when a person says that they're gonna do something. If something happens, or if Allah grants a particular thing. For example, I'm gonna give food, I'm gonna give charity, and then Allah's gonna, Allah, please, like, give me this thing or whatever. Or if something happens, that I'm gonna do this. Ya Allah, if you give me this, I'm gonna do this. Yeah? And you vowed it to Allah. This should only be done to who? To Allah. But if you're going to donate charity, you're going to donate rewards of an action, that's not shirk. So to reward towards prophets, saints, to the righteous, to family and stuff like that, that wouldn't be in the same bracket. That's not worship. If a vow if a vow is done for other than Allah, it's an offering of gifts in their name. It's not worship. When is it shirk? It's shirk when you have made it so. You've made it worship. Okay, for example, some consider donating rewards with an act of making a vow. And they say it's shirk and it's haram. But this argument, it doesn't stand. Look, one thing is nudur or nadhr, it's used in a sense of charity as well, sadaqah. Though it implies worship, nadhr, it implies bowing, submitting, and extreme reverence. The sound belief regarding it is that it's the right of Allah alone, yes. But what we're saying here is that when a vow is being made other than Allah, is done so in only one sense and one sense alone. It can't be in any other sense at all. And that's when it's a gift. That's when it's a purely a gift. When it's a offering of rewards. And you do that through Allah. You ask Allah to do so. Right? So the vow doesn't become a legitimate legal one in that sense. When it's done for other than Allah. Okay? Now, the word nadhr, if used for prophets and saints, is figurative in that sense. It's never literal. It's never literal. It's just what I just said. It's a general usage of the word, giving a gift or a donation. Just as sacrifice, worship, supplication are just for Allah, yes, vowing is as well, but it's benefit. It's benefit, as in the food that you're giving out or the charity you're giving out. That benefits creation, the poor, right? And the true spirit of vowing is actually piety, is actually taqwa, is purity of intention. Now, vowing these things isn't shirk. No, but why? A pious deed can also be undertaken as a vow. Once Imam Hussein and Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, radiallahu anhuma, they fell ill. And a vow was made to fast for their recovery. This is mentioned in the Tafsir al-Kabir of Imam al-Razi. And we shouldn't forget two things here. One, that when we do actions, it's for him alone, firstly. But then its association can be with creation. For example, you're displaying respect of a pious individual just because you're placing a cloth over the tomb or something like that. This is perhaps an action that they're doing out of reverence for the signs of Allah, a righteous person. The fact that the action is linked to a friend of Allah reveals the intention, is that it's to seek the pleasure of Allah, and that you're preserving the sanctity of the friend of Allah. And so you're enabling yourself and you're trying to follow what Allah has said in terms of reverence. That's all. It's not worship. It's reverence. For example, somebody vows that they're going to be successful in completing something, and on that completion, they're going to gift on the 11th day of the lunar month, for example, which is what people do, associating the 11th with Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Gilani in order to reward or give the rewards of it, to donate that. That in and of itself is charity. It's charity. Or food that you've cooked. The Quran recited, you made dua with Allah to seek His pleasure, and you donate the rewards of what you recite to the pious. And that's rewarding the benefits going to two places. One, rewarding the rewards of the pious acts towards those that have passed. And secondly, the food going to other people. So two actions. Right? Is the issue here is we're saying that is not shirk. You're rewarding or donating. That's what you're doing. Okay, so donating rewards to someone else's soul or attributing to him, a certain deed or something like that, or piety, that's okay. But it's done for Allah. It should be done for Allah. It should be done for Him alone. Okay, should be that's the condition. For example, Sa'd ibn Ubadah, he was advised by the Prophet ﷺ to dig a well and attribute it to his mother. Right? To attribute it to the mother. Abu Huraira, there's a hadith in Abu Dawood, he said to those that they did the Umrah, Hajj, who came from Ubullah, an area in Basra, that one of them should offer 2 or 4 nafil and donate the rewards to him. It's in Abu Dawood, meaning rewards of gifts, charity, nawafil, they can be donated to others. And it's permissible to donate the good to someone else. Right? And this is a completely different topic that might require completely different discussion. But vowing only becomes shirk when someone asserts that vow is due to or due for someone other than him. Like we gave the example of the crops. Right? If a vow is done exclusively for Allah and its rewards are donated, that's separate. That's not shirk. Seeking nearness to other than Allah, to seeking nearness to someone other than Allah isn't in and of itself shirk. Right? Now we might want nearness to the Kaaba. We might want nearness to Masjid Nabawi because they're sacred and they're sanctified. Right? For example. And we do that through worship, we do that through association, we do that with our actions, we do that with being there. On the other hand, acts of drawing near, we're saying, doesn't constitute shirk. If nearness to other in general was shirk, for example, we're just using this example to get nearness to someone else. If that nearness in general was shirk, then relatives would become partners with Allah as well by the mere fact that they're near. Because everybody has a duty to maintain ties with kinship. So if the act of drawing near to an other is considered shirk, unreservedly, that all the commands of the Prophet to promote love and closeness between relatives will be invalidated and false as well. Now, I don't ask for reward except love for my kindreds. So one must accept that seeking nearness to an other isn't shirk. Rather, that if nearness is sought, is done with the intention of worship, then it is shirk. If something's done with the intention of worship, that you're going to get near to this person because somehow is worship, that's shirk. Right? But nearness in and of itself isn't. Okay? Those who deny intermediaries as well, intercessors, for drawing near to Allah, they should ponder over it, because the idolaters, they didn't believe that the idol was simply a means. They used to fall sajda to them. They used to take them as gods. They used to offer animals as vows with the intention of what? Worship. What we're saying here, the difference between the Muslims that do things like this, intermediation, intercession, and seeking an intermediary, and making dua through deeds, making dua through the Prophet, making dua through his family, making dua through the companions, through the khulafa, through the pious. They're only taking them as means. They're not worshipping. What we're saying here, the difference is when you do that, when you make them not just a means, but they become God. Right? If someone does that, obviously, it's going to be misguided. It's going to be shirk. Right? Donating as well rewards by means of a slaughtered animal can be also something that we can do. We do this many occasions. Charity, atonement, when we've got to make an atonement for something that we've done, in marriage, walima, the Eid, various gatherings, festive occasions. We give out meat, and it's done in the name of Allah and His worship. This is what's called ihlal. It's a form of worship. But the moment we do it in the name of other than Allah, it becomes shirk. Right? So that's also very clear. For example, marriage, animals sacrificed, we feed friends and relatives, those who are guests, the birth of a child, the aqiqah, the mawlid, and urs. None of these are reasons, though, to negate shirk. to negate Tawheed and to affirm Shirk. Whoever makes arrangements to serve food with belief, though, that it somehow is worship, or that, they're serving a god, then that's obviously Shirk. But with the belief that it's a Prophet's Sunnah, or the intention of providing a gift, or giving charity, or that he'll be rewarded, he may reward what he's doing as well as a gift to donate, or to keep the reward for himself. This is just supplications. This is good intentions. And that can't be shirk. When does lying become shirk? This is what we're essentially discussing. The difference between intentions, the difference between worship, the difference between donating, the difference between means. Shah Abdul Aziz Dehlavi, he mentioned about this, that sacrifice of a soul for anyone besides Allah is incorrect. Buying food items or other valuables to attain nearness to someone besides Allah is forbidden and an act of shirk. However, donating the rewards of these things to someone is permissible, just as they have a right to give anything to anyone they want. Same way. Humans don't own the souls to give them to others. Giving wealth away is an act of merit because others benefit, but this wealth is of no benefit to the dead. Instead, they benefit from the reward of that wealth. An animal soul doesn't benefit someone when alive nor dead, but an authentic hadith allows sacrifice on behalf of the dead. The souls are presented to Allah, and the reward that He gains of the good deed is to be donated to the deceased, not that the animal should be slaughtered for the sake of that person. So it's not for the sake of the individual, it's for rewarding the blessings that come from it. And so, again, if something's an intention of worship, it's not allowed. Other than that, it's okay. Shirk is also where the soul of an animal is offered to someone else. That would be shirk. If the vow believes that the righteous and the saints are by their essence absolute authorities, that's shirk. If there's an absence of these intentions when slaughtering and giving these things and doing these things, and with the belief that, okay, they're given the rewards, and that it's only Allah that can do that, that's fine. Ya Allah, I've done such and such a work. I vow to you that I will slaughter such and such an animal for your sake, and I will donate the reward of this to the souls of such and such and such, a pious servant of yours. This is allowed. Yeah. There's three usage that we've seen. It's either an act of worship, or there's a donation of reward, or we're serving gifts. We're serving something of benefit, food for guests, participants, poor, the needy, right? And they're not dedicated to Allah, nor the deceased. What's their intention? The presence of Allah. It's worship, it's taqwa. The reward is gifted. All right, and those that are present are benefited by what? The food or the gifts. So there's different meanings in different contexts, and knowing all of these are vital, really important. And then we have oneness in oaths. Okay, oneness in oaths. Oneness in oaths, we have what's called legal oath, a legal hafl. This can only be taken in the name of Allah, never in the name of anyone other than Him. It's an oath by the name of Allah to do or not to do a thing in the future. And if you break that, then it's an obligation to expiate for it. You need to pay up for it. And an oath in the name of the Prophet though, it's not in the same bracket. It's not in the same bracket. Just like an oath by the Quran is an oath by Allah, for example. Other than that, it's false belief. The disbelievers, they used to make oaths by the name of their forefathers and false gods. And the Prophet ﷺ forbade it. He forbade it. We can only do it in the name of Allah. And when it's done in other than the name of Allah, we have to reaffirm our faith. The Prophet ﷺ said, say La ilaha illallah. Do your shahada again. If you take an oath other than the name of Allah. If you do it by mistake or due to some ignorance, then we repent. We seek forgiveness. And note as well that it's permissible to make only, other than that, oaths of veneration. Oath of what? Veneration. There's over 27 oaths of glorification in the Quran. Most of them are related to the Prophet ﷺ. These things include light, nur, the heart, the life, the ancestors, radiance, revelation, the qalam, the qalam, the tablet, al-lawh al-mahfuz, the blessed nights, right? All of these things are things that the Prophet ﷺ, or that Allah Azza wa Jal, He's mentioned by oath. Yeah? That He's mentioned by oath. And then we have the oneness in injunctions. Allah is supreme. He's supreme judge. To Him belongs all judgments. And obedience to the prophets is mandated because it is through them that we come to know the decree of Allah. And the commands of Allah are of two types. One, the oneness in existential rulings. What? His command that brings into existence. Things that come into existence. So 7 heavens come into existence in 2 days. Allah is saying be, and it is. Allah bringing about a punishment. Allah bringing about life. Allah bringing about a judgment. These are oneness in rulings that are to do with something coming into existence. And then you have oneness in legal rulings. This is the hukm, the command that implies the address of the lawgiver, which is the eternal command of Allah. All divine commands were given in pre-eternity, but their obligation comes into existence when Allah orders His servant. Let's look at examples. A hukm, in this sense, what we're talking about, this command, is a ruling that is the address of Allah connected to the actions of legally responsible people, whether through obligation, choice, stipulation. For example, Allah wants ease. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah wants ease for you, no hardship. Allah wants to lighten your burden. There's no hardship or constriction in the deen. La ikraha fi deen. Don't worship anyone else. Be just. Be benevolent to others. Give to relatives. Entrust belongings to those who are worthy of them. Right? These are things that legally responsible people can do. Right? There's a choice. You can bring about ease. You can bring about hardship. You can be just to someone. You can be unjust to someone. You can give to relatives. You can not give to relatives. You can entrust someone with something you can't. Right? But in some places it's an obligation. Some places it's a choice. Some places it's a stipulation. Some places it's what Allah wants. Right? And when we consider command as well, Islam doesn't separate politics from religion in and of itself. Hukm does apply to governance and political decrees, in addition to deen, in addition to worship. And the hukm, though, is not the words revealed by Allah in this sense. It's a legal code. It's a value, it's a legal value that's established by the revealed word through the Quran. So you will have a lawgiver, you'll have a legislator, right? You have Sharia courts, right? But you will have the ultimate lawgivers is Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. The sovereignty of Allah is true and real, but the Prophet's command is bestowed and delegated. He's his deputy. He has authority. He has power to as a delegated authority. That's why it is obligation to follow the Prophet ﷺ, otherwise it wouldn't be. His commands, his prohibitions are in fact the commands and the prohibitions of Allah. Declaring things lawful or unlawful is a common right of Allah and His Messenger. Like Allah says, they don't consider unlawful the things Allah and His Messenger have declared unlawful. For example, the Prophet ﷺ, he fixed the limits of the haram. Yeah. The Prophet ﷺ, he set the boundaries of the outer limits of Mecca. Even though Allah only declared the Kaaba as the haram, the sacred. Huh? The Quran says, while Ibrahim alayhi declared Mecca sacred, the Prophet ﷺ, he fixed the limits, the miqat. Ibn Abbas narrates that the Prophet ﷺ did that. You know, the places where we put ihram, the miqat. This is the fixing of the limits surrounding Mecca. So these are exclusive rights that's common between Allah and His Messenger. But other than them, right, we don't have the same. We don't have the same rights or the same power. And giving that to someone means you are doing shirk. The Christians did this with the monks and the priests. They gave them the right of law, which was only for Allah in its real sense, and His Messenger as deputies. Now, there is a commonality, though, between Allah and His creation when it comes to commanding and forbidding. Allah has told us to command and forbid evil, for example. Okay? Commanding or decreeing is an exclusive right, though, of Allah. He runs the system of creating, planning, and commanding and control. When it's used for Him, it's the ultimate sovereignty. But when it's command to us, it's the command of the Prophet ﷺ, it's a different sense. It's not absolute in the sense of Allah, right? And in the divinity. Obedience to the Prophet ﷺ is faith in him. Likewise, faith in him is faith in Allah. And there's an ayah which proves that without having faith in the messenger and prophethood of the Prophet ﷺ, it's impossible to seek the acceptance of Allah. Yeah? And he's necessary, we say like La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Okay, we're gonna have a 5-minute break, and then inshallah we'll continue with the bid'ah. Mm. So I've just had a question here. What does death feel like? Now, I can either say, I've been dead before and I've felt it, right? Or I can tell him that um, what Allah and the Rasul sallallahu tells us. Someone else said that your whole body starts feeling cold, your blood pressure stuff. Yeah, there's various symptoms that are described, and they're well and true. But what you need to know is everybody will taste it, and it can be painful. And inshallah, we hope and we pray for what? A good end. That's what we need to pray for. Husnul Khatimah, a beautiful end. Ameen. Okay, so we continue. A quick recap on what we've done. So we looked at the definition. We looked at the definition of bid'ah, and that it refers to any innovation that introduces changes to the essentials of the religion. When these changes result in altering fundamental beliefs or practices, they're considered misguided and they lead to apostasy. That the Rasul mentioned. And the permissible innovations, we looked at that as well. The innovations that don't contradict the Quran and Sunnah and are beneficial to the community, they can be considered permissible or even commendable. But the intention behind them plays a crucial role in determining its acceptability. As we saw through the examples of the Quran and Hadith, like monasticism through the Christians, and how Allah didn't prescribe it. They innovated something, but they innovated it to seek His pleasure. Although it wasn't divinely ordained, it was commended for its motive and it was rewarded. And based on two groups. So one group became the group where they didn't maintain the boundaries, and then there was one group that did. One was rewarded and one did. They lost. So it's conditional, right? Then we looked at the role of the companions, radiallahu anhum ardahum, of the Prophet ﷺ, and that they were engaged in innovations themselves, and how they spoke about innovation, like compiling the Quran, the congregational prayers of the Taraweeh. We looked at how these weren't practiced by the Prophet ﷺ. And like, for example, another example was Salatul Duha that we saw. Salatul Duha, how they were doing it, every day. And it wasn't something that the Prophet ﷺ did again, but they deemed it something that was a bid'ah, but they were still doing it. And a lot of these were deemed necessary for the welfare of the community. And they used it in a positive way, bid'ah. Now it's just completely different. People are using it in a completely different sense. And then differentiation as well was done by the Salaf as well. The Salaf, they used the term to refer to heretical beliefs, practices that contradicted the tenets of Islam. They didn't use it for all new practices or acts of piety. And if they did, it was in a general sense, right? So we studied that last time. Today, now we move further, and hopefully we can wrap up our discussions on bid'ah and focus more on Tawheed. Because I feel like with Tawheed, we've been trying to get through a lot and not being able to delve into it a bit more, make more sense of it. So inshallah, next time we'll focus more on that. Now, there's evidence for a new praiseworthy innovation. If the solution to a given matter can't be found in the Quran and Hadith, what happens? That's a natural question. What do we do? Do we just go to Quran and Sunnah, and if it's not there, we just leave it? Like, what can we do? There's something called ijtihad. Something called ijtihad. To make jurisprudential opinions. right, is not only permissible, but it's instructed by the Prophet ﷺ. We've been instructed to do this. So if bid'ah were that were something that only can be found in the Quran and Sunnah, and if it doesn't exist there, then it's bid'ah. If that was the case, then the Prophet ﷺ would never say that if you can't find something in there, then make ijtihad, make an opinion, form a decision. You see, the Sunnah actually permits for a qualified person to derive unprecedented rulings through the Quran and Hadith. As in, what they're doing essentially what Sayyidah Aisha said. What did she say? Do you remember? She said that something that doesn't have a basis in the reason, as in they find a basis and they apply it to an underlying need or an issue that they're facing, a maslahah. And this has been practiced by the companions themselves and the scholars. Let's look at examples. Example one. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, radiallahu anhu. He initiated a new practice in prayer, which was approved by the Prophet ﷺ himself. And he said this, how will you judge when a matter is put before you? Huh? And the Prophet ﷺ, he asked him, and he said, I will judge by the book of Allah. And then the Prophet said, what if you don't find it in there? Then I will decide according to the Sunnah of Allah's Messenger. Then the Prophet asked him, what if you don't find it in the Sunnah of Allah's Messenger or the book of Allah? Then Mu'adh said, then I'll do my best to form an opinion, as in I'll do ijtihad. And I will spare no effort in doing so. And the narrator adds, and the Prophet ﷺ patted his chest and said, all praise be to Allah, who has made the messenger of Allah accord with what pleases the messenger of Allah. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Right? So in this, we can clearly see it's a principle established in hadith that there is something that is a bid'ah hasana. This is based through these types of hadith, that there's a bid'ah hasana. Through the juristic reasoning, through ijtihad, through personal jurisprudential opinion formation, the Holy Prophet ﷺ, he created space for new developments, new rulings. And new rulings, as we discussed last time, is going to involve the form of what? Innovation, in the literal sense. It's going to be something new. And it would be unprecedented. That didn't exist before. Or in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, or the companions. Naturally, that's going to be the case. And we see as well people misquoting the verse in the Quran that today I perfected for you your religion. And they say, well, that means there's no room for developments in the deen. Had that been the case, then the Prophet ﷺ would never have asked that question to Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He would have never said to him, if you can't find something in the Quran and Sunnah, what would you do? And he said, I'm going to make an opinion. Here's another hadith, An-Nisa'i. Shurayh, he wrote to Sayyidina Umar, seeking counsel. So Umar, radiallahu anhu, he wrote back to him saying this, judge according to what is in the book of Allah. If it's not mentioned in there, then judge according to the Sunnah. If it's not mentioned in the book of Allah or the Sunnah, then judge according to the way of the righteous past judgment. If it's not mentioned in the book of Allah, the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, and the righteous didn't pass the judgment on it, then if you wish, go ahead and exercise your juristic reasoning. And if you wish, leave it. And I think that leaving it is better for you. Peace be upon you. Yeah? He wouldn't have said those things if we only adhere to Quran and Sunnah, strictly speaking, literally, and not look at anything else. This also establishes that besides the Quran and Sunnah, there are other sources for rulings and legislation in the Sharia. Okay? For example, just mentioning, he mentioned what? He mentioned the pious mentioned the righteous. In Surah Fatiha, what does Allah instruct us to make dua for guidance, right? What guidance? Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. The mustaqim, the straight path is what? The path الذين أنعمت عليهم. Those that you bestowed your favors on. And the good fellows, the righteous, the prophets, the saints, companions, all these people. There's a reference to the Salihun and the first generation, companions, the Khulafa, then after them, the Tabi'een, then after them, the Tabi'een, and continuing to the present day. The Ummah will never be empty of the pious, never be empty of them. It's our duty to find them, or whether we recognize them or we don't is another matter. And when a mujtahid, when this legally qualified individual derives a learning with utmost sincerity, and they try their best, they can be right, they can be wrong. When they proved correct, they are actually rewarded from Allah. Okay? Not done that again. However, if the ruling proves to be incorrect, then he is given one reward just for doing that. Abu Hurairah narrates a hadith that when a mujtahid derives a legal ruling with utmost sincerity and the ruling proves to be correct, he receives 2 rewards from Allah. However, if the ruling proves to be incorrect, he is given 1 reward for carrying out ijtihad. Okay? Abu Hurairah narrates that what? He narrates this, that when a judge gives a verdict by performing ijtihad and his verdict is correct, he's awarded 2 rewards. But if he gives a verdict by using ijtihad, then it's proven to be incorrect, he still receives 1 reward. And this is in Sahih al-Bukhari. Huh? The next example, Imam Muslim, he mentions in Kitab al-Zakat that the Prophet ﷺ, he encouraged the initiation of good and praiseworthy act. As in he said to create new things. He actually encouraged to initiate new things, a new sunnah, a new bid'ah. He actually said to do that. He encouraged it. What did he say? If someone introduces a good custom, a sunnah, if someone introduces a good custom, a sunnah, into Islam, what does sunnah mean? It's not just a good custom. It means a new thing. It means a new way, a new path, a new methodology. Then he will get its reward. And the reward of those who put it into practice after him without anything being deducted from their rewards. As in, they're going to get reward as well. If someone introduces a bad custom, sunnah sayyah, that the first word is sunnah hasana. The second word is sunnatan sayyah. Sayyah. But this is just like the 2 words I told you about. The bid'ah hasana and the bid'ah sayyah. Whoever introduces into Islam a good bid'ah, they get reward. Whoever introduces a bad bid'ah, in other words, into Islam, he is charged with its sin. And the sin of those who put it into practice after him without anything being deducted from their sins. Sahih Muslim. And using this as evidence, Imam Yahya bin Sharaf al-Nawawi, Imam al-Nawawi, he writes this about this hadith. He writes this. He says the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, if someone introduces a good custom, sunnah, and if someone introduces a bad custom, in another tradition, if someone calls to guidance, whoever calls to huda, and if someone invites to misguidance, dalala, are 2 explicit traditions that encourage the introduction of praiseworthy affairs. As in what? Bid'ah hasana. And the prohibition of introducing bid'ah al-dalala. Blameworthy affairs. Right? Blameworthy affairs. Okay? So these are the examples. I'm explaining to you that there is a basis of a good bid'ah and a bad one. The compilation of the Quran, for example, we saw last time. It was unprecedented. Abu Bakr questioned it, right? But he said it was good. It's a good thing. It's necessary. That was an ijtihad. The introduction of the congregational prayer, the Taraweeh, by Sayyidina Umar. What did we see there again? He referred to it as an excellent innovation, a bid'ah hasana, right? He praised it. Meaning what? Not all innovations are negative. The institution of the second adhan in Jum'ah prayer by Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, that became a practice in Islam. This is another bid'ah hasana. The suspension of the punishment for theft by Sayyidina Umar. In circumstances that he was in, it showed ijtihad. He applied an opinion. He suspended what was otherwise part of the book and sunnah. Right? There's many examples like this. You see, there's a basis that we need to think about. And that basis is called ibaha, permissibility. The Quran and the Sunnah are silent about permissibility of many things. There's no legal evidence to prove prohibition in those cases. If there's no evidence, by default, the position in Islam is that things going to be deemed lawful and permissible because of the absence of what? The absence of no legal evidence to prove that it's prohibited. For example, if something is a sunnah, it's permissible. If something's not a sunnah, it doesn't mean that it's haram. So if I don't do it according to the sunnah, it doesn't mean it's haram. But if I've done it according to the sunnah, obviously it's greater and it's the best thing. And that's the permissible thing. The basic principle, the legal maxim in Islam is that al-aslu fil ashya, that the asl in all things, the original position of all things in Islam is that they are ibahatun. They are permissible by default. They are permissible by default. As in, what does it mean? The burden of proof then is on the claimant. Whoever proves something is not allowed, if something is a bid'ah, it becomes a proof on them to prove that thing. Because nothing is forbidden unless it's been directly declared. Islam is ease. Ad-dinu yusr, the Prophet said. And it facilitates ease. Look at the measures and the rukhsa, the different things that's available to us in terms of when we're traveling or when we're ill, and even consuming haram. Like in situations, what's otherwise haram, you can consume it because of your life being at risk in that particular time and circumstance. Right? So it facilitates ease. Only the things that contradict the sources, they're impermissible. Okay, and then this is all of these things that we discuss. It leads to the categorization of bid'ah. It leads to us understanding and realizing the categorization of bid'ah. The Imams and Hadith scholars, they made it clear that not every innovation is impermissible. It's only those that have no legal origin, precedent, or proof that don't contradict the rulings. Okay? And everything that has a choice between doing it or not doing it without requirement or reprimand, that's something that's permissible by default. It is something in the middle. Okay? It doesn't matter whether you do it or you don't do it. Now, the first categorization of bid'ah is two. You have what's called the literal innovation, lughawi, a literal innovation. That this is something that's not found in the Quran and the Sunnah, but there is an origin or an example under commendable acts, like the Taraweeh. Ibn Taymiyyah says this is a literal innovation. Or the vows being placed into the Quran, or the Islamic sciences, the creation of the Islamic sciences. Then the second one is what's called legal innovations, shar'iyya, bid'ah, shar'iyya. These are those things that contradict and oppose the Quran and Sunnah and the consensus of the scholars, like the sects that we learned about, the Khawarij, the Qadariyah, right? Or the Mu'tazilites, all of these heretical beliefs, people that went against the tenets of faith and the tenets of Islam. These are the legal innovations, the Shari'i innovations. Then you have a second type of categorization, and that's the categorization that we've been speaking about. So the first is that bid'ah hasan, a commendable innovation. Now, this has a basis from the Quran and Sunnah. So a verse or a hadith shows it comes under a commendable matter, as in that's the basis. It shows that it comes under a commendable matter, but it doesn't contradict Sharia. This actually is in fact a literal bid'ah. So it's the same as the lughawi one. So it's not directly in the Quran and Sunnah particularly, but there will be a basis. But sometimes it might be directly. It's literal. So there's three types under this. You have a compulsory innovation, wajiba, is new and necessary, like the creation of the Islamic sciences. It was new and necessary. Like the Taraweeh prayer. Like the creation of the compilation of the Quran, the book format. It was new and necessary. The recommendatory innovation, mustahab. You have this one, the second thing. This is new, but the Sharia hasn't declared it unlawful. For example, there's people, when we had during Ramadan in recent years, because Isha was really late, like 11 o'clock, half 11, 12 o'clock in some cases, going to half 9, 9 o'clock, and people had work the next day. And so there was a new form of Taraweeh that came about, and that wasn't usually what we used to in the mosque, and that was to do a really, really short form of it. It can either be 20 rakats, or it was maybe there's 8, depends on the individuals, but they did like just surahs, they didn't complete the Quran in it, for example, right? So I've done that for many years in the recent years, where we did only surahs, and then we focused on understanding. We did like a 5-minute, 10-minute talk after that, and we spoke about what we've been reading, right? So that's like something that was new in that sense, right? But it's not unlawful. Like the Mawlid is another example. It's new, but it's not declared unlawful, and it's done with the intention of rewards and seeking nearness to the Prophet ﷺ, huh? And expressing one's love, which can be done in many ways. And then we have the third category within commendable innovation, and that's mubaha. Something that's new, is not prohibited by Sharia, but is done without an intention of reward. And there's examples of this, like shaking hands after Fajr and Asr. For example, you just shaking hands. Okay? And there's many other examples. And then you have a second category, and that's the condemned innovation, sayyi'ah. That's something that contradicts and opposes what? The Quran and the Sunnah. And it lacks an origin and a precedent. This is in fact the legal bid'ah. This is in fact the legal bid'ah. The legal bid'ah was what? Shari'i. It contradicts and opposes Quran and Sunnah and consensus of scholars, like the sects that came about. So there's two in this. You have what's called the forbidden innovation, muharrama, and then you have the prohibited innovation, makruha. So in the muharrama is new. Example of this is that the new sect, so dissension. Okay. And then the prohibited is like an act that leaves the sunnah. And what I'm talking about, the sunnah mu'akkada, sunnah ghayr mu'akkada. Like the ornamenting the mosque without necessity. For example, Prophet ﷺ didn't do that, right? And all this comes from this hadith. It comes from this hadith that we've looked at. It comes from this. The basis of what? That there is a bid'ah hasana and that there's a bid'ah sayyah. There's over 51 renowned books that explain this division of bid'ah. Over 51. And it's not limited to this. There's many, but they all explain this. Like Imam al-Bayhaqi, Imam al-Ghazali, Imam Athir al-Jazari, Imam al-Nawawi, al-Qurtubi, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Kathir, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, al-Suyuti, Ibn Baz as well, Muhammad al-Maliki, al-Alawi al-Maliki, and many others. They all explain this division. And Imam Nawawi, for instance, he said that the hadith, every dissenting matter is bid'ah and every bid'ah is misguidance, as in kullu bid'atin dalala. Yeah? That hadith, it doesn't signify generality. Because of the hadith, what? That he who introduces a good custom in Islam, he says that specifies and restricts it. Therefore, every dissenting matter, every bid'ah, it refers to only heretical uprisings, dissensions, and condemned innovations. And he says this in his commentary on Sahih Muslim, because this hadith is in Sahih Muslim. And he comments on it, saying that. And likewise, 50 plus other Imams say the same thing. Right? And Imam Tirmidhi, he mentions hadith by Ibn Umar that where the Prophet said, he said that Allah will not unite my ummah, or he may have said the ummah of Muhammad wasallam, in agreement upon dalala. You've got 51 plus Imams here saying the same thing. Allah will not unite the ummah upon an agreement if it's an error, upon dalala. Allah's hand of power and protection is with the collective body, with the jama'ah. And the one who deviates from it, in fact, is the one who deviates into the hellfire. Now, this doesn't rule out that there's a percentage of people that are on error. Okay? It rules out the ummah, the collective body, the overwhelming majority, that they are protected. But there's a percentage that isn't, because they don't follow that. And what do we hear from those that bear the flag of bid'ah and shirk in our day and age? What do we hear from them? We're hearing typically all the things that a lot of people are doing, and all of these imams have said that they're wrong. Based on one scholar, one or two scholars. Those that just come out from Saudi, all those regions, that all of a sudden everyone's wrong, and people from subcontinent, people from all different regions, Yemen, this place and that place, that they're all people that are doing bid'ah, and they're all people out of Islam, and they're all people that are doing shirk. This is all you hear. Whereas the Prophet ﷺ said something else. And we've very clearly established that there's categorizations through the Quran and Hadith, and that the understanding of bid'ah is very specific and also general. And so these are all misconceptions, that one, every innovation is misguidance. We've established this isn't the case. This is not in the absolute sense. When the Prophet ﷺ said that, is qualified and is restricted to what? The legal innovations. Just like Imam al-Nawawi mentioned. If every innovation were like that, to be misguidance, entire framework we use today it would be entirely misguided. And another misconception is that the understanding that comes from the verse here in Surah Al-Ma'idah, the next verse that we discussed from before, about the signs of Allah. That today I have perfected for you your religion. اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا. That today I perfected for you your deen. I've completed my blessing upon you. This is on the day of Arafah, right? And I've completed my blessing upon you, my ni'mah, my grace, and I've chosen for you Islam. This verse, it doesn't restrict development. For some reason, these brothers, sisters, they see it as jobs done and dusted. Everything now is in the Quran and Sunnah and is done and dusted. That's right. Everything is in the Quran and Sunnah, but it doesn't restrict development. Islam is dynamic. Islam is flexible. It's for the entirety of the end of times. And that spans across generations and generations until the day of judgment. This actually means many things. Ibn Abbas, he said it means the obligations and the prohibitions were complete. And he is amongst those, the greatest knowledge of the Quran. He says it's the completion of the obligations and the prohibitions. Qatada, amongst many others, he said this completion meant the exiling of the idolaters, that they were banished, that the shirk was removed. Another is the ending of abrogation. Another meaning was the removal of fear of one's enemy. Another was the protection of Allah, of the Sharia, from abrogation by another Sharia, like it was in the past religions, that they were abrogated by a new Sharia. That Allah has protected this from that. And also, in essence, then, if you look at all of that, it's the completion of His core tenets and the principles of the deen. That's been completed for you. And now you can take from that and build on it. And as in, you can now make ijtihad. You can now derive from that. When you come across a new situation, what are we meant to do? Okay, what guidance is there in the Quran and Sunnah? Is there a like for like example that we can take from? Okay, great. Is there not a like for like? Okay, what's next to that? What's something that's showing us that we can take a principle from it and apply it to this new situation? Right? Islam is vast. Right? In this hadith, and another one in Sahih Muslim, we see that it mentions, the Prophet ﷺ said that if someone invents to guidance, like Imam Nawawi mentioned, there's another hadith that mentions to guidance, to huda. Whoever invents to guidance, he receives its rewards. And the reward of those who put it into practice after him, likewise, without anything being deducted from their rewards. And if someone invents to misguidance, dalala, he is charged with sin, and the sin of those who put it into practice after him, without being deducted from their sins. Just as the word huda, guidance, is general in its indication, the word dalala is also general. So any action based on misguidance is declared dalala, meaning it is those actions that are prohibited and detrimental to the deen, going against the principles, the beliefs, challenging its ethics and its norms. That's misguidance. That's not allowed. Guidance is the opposite of that. So this has become like Tawhid and Shirk. Do you notice something? Whenever the Prophet ﷺ spoke, he mentioned opposites. He mentioned things in pairs, just like Allah does. He mentions things in pairs, day and night. Right? The Prophet ﷺ speaks in the same way, in pairs, male and female, huda, guidance, misguidance, good sunnah, bad sunnah. Good character, bad character. Right? Guidance includes not just the sunnah, it includes all the righteous deeds. Guidance, right? Righteous deeds, they call it guidance. And there's another hadith that doesn't use the word huda, it doesn't use the word dalala, it doesn't use the word sunnah, hasana, sunnah sayyi'ah, don't use that. But it uses the word sunnah khair and sunnah shar. Sunnah khair and sunnah shar, given the same message from in Sahih at-Tirmidhi. And these are all the same, like the divisions of bid'ah hasana and bid'ah sayyi'ah. They're the same. So what are the base arguments that are being made here? The base arguments is number one, that dalala, misguidance, would never have been used if bid'ah were outright bad. The Prophet ﷺ would never have said that bid'ah dalala. وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ فِي النَّارِ. It was enough just to say bid'ah. It would have been self-explanatory. Why use the word, why annex the word bid'ah, dalala to it? It's obvious. Because some bid'ah are not misguided. Had he done that, then definitely, 100%, there would be no categorization of bid'ah. Because it would have been categorical in that sense. There would have not been any need, and we wouldn't have found examples or a base to even explain what bid'ah meant. And the Prophet ﷺ, he spoke like that. He spoke in brief words, but those brief words were expansive. And they were for all times, all times. For example, the issue of moon sighting. When you look at the issue of moon sighting, the Prophet ﷺ used the word sumu li ru'yatihi waftiru li ru'yatihi, right? To start your fasting based on seeing it, and to break your fast based on seeing it. Now, the word he used for seeing was the word ru'ya. And that word, it has vast meanings to it. It's not restrictive. It's a general word. Ru'ya is the same word for a dream. It's the same word for knowledge. It's the same word for thinking. It's the same word for investigation. It's the same word for assessment. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. Did you not see what your Rabb did with the people of the elephant? Now, when we're reading the Quran, have we seen that? Have we seen the elephants? Did the Prophet ﷺ see it? No. أَلَمْ تَرَى مَا رُؤْيَاك. What do you think? What do you think? رؤيا رؤياك رؤياك, your opinion. What's your opinion? So that's why you have places like Saudi, like Turkey, like the UAE, like places in the UK. They take the formation of the new months based on observatory data. They don't do local sighting. They don't go out and sight the moon based on this hadith, because of the word that's used, because it's not restrictive, it's general. You see, I'm giving an example, another example, so you can understand that bid'ah is used in the same way. Now, innovations, the second point, innovations based on ijtihad, they're acceptable as well. We've learned this now as well, when they're in harmony with the what? With Sharia, and they bring about some benefit. And Islam and the Prophet ﷺ encouraged it, told the companions to do that. Because Islam is living, it's adaptable, it addresses needs, the evolving needs of society. And that's the job of our scholars. why bid'ah can be negative and surely will always have that element. When exercised correctly through ijtihad, it can lead to what? Positive developments in practice. This is bid'ah hasana. And there's clear divisions of bid'ah that are either good, unrewardable, bad, and sinful, or they're neutral in their nature. And there's over what? 45, 51 plus scholars that have discussed this. The likes of Imam al-Shafi'i, the likes of Imam al-Qurtubi, the likes of Imam al-Ghazali, the likes of Imam al-Nawawi, and more. They've all discussed this. For example, I'll tell you one of Imam al-Shafi'i, right? Imam al-Shafi'i, he says that there's two kinds of unprecedented matters. There's what? There's two kinds of unprecedented matters. One that contravenes the Quran, the Sunnah, and the practice of the companions or the consensus of the community. So he's saying, in other words, that about ihdath. He's talking about ihdath. ما أحدث مما يخالف كتابا أو سنة أو أثرا أو إجماعا. كتاب, sunnah, athar, ijma'. The Quran, the Sunnah, the practice of the companions, and the consensus of the community, of the Ummah. This is, he says, this is bid'ah ضلالة. He says, فهذه بدعة ضلالة. Imam Shafi. Then he says, وثانية ما أحدث من الخير. The second one is an unprecedented matter that is based on good. فيه لا خلاف. There's no contravention in it of the sources. As in what? The Quran, the Sunnah, the practice of the companions, and the consensus of the Ummah. Notice that's part of it. It doesn't stop the practice of the companions. And then he says that this is the non-blameworthy innovation. Bid'ah ghayr madhmuma. And then he mentions that Sayyidina Umar, he said that the night vigil in Ramadan, as in the Tarawih prayer, he said that this was an excellent innovation. That is to say that it is an innovation which had no prior existence, it hadn't existed before, and it would not be rejected. And Imam Rajab al-Hanbali, Imam Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he commentated on this, what Imam Shafi'i said. And Imam Shafi'i, he said this, he mentioned this, what we've just quoted, he mentioned this in various books, various sources. Like this is mentioned by Imam Malik, for example, in his Muwatta, right? And Imam Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, in his book Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam, he mentions about what he said as well, and he says the same thing, that there's two kinds, the praiseworthy and the condemned, right? And all these imams, they say the same thing. They don't disagree on it. And so that is where I want to stop our discussion on bid'ah. Because I think and I believe we've done enough to discuss the concept of what it is. And I'm sure that you all will appreciate and understand now the concept of bid'ah. Alhamdulillah, we've shown to be very clear what the reality is and what it entails. And having understood this, you will realize that the many times and the many things that are called bid'ah today are done with misunderstanding. And they're intellectually dishonest. And they are in reality misguiding the ummah themselves. And what we'll be doing, inshallah, next week, we'll focus more on Tawhid and Shirk. We might, in fact, just dedicate the entire session to that. And this study is based on what we have done on Bid'ah, on Kitab al-Tawhid, what we've been doing. I mentioned that there was two books, Kitab al-Tawhid, Kitab al-Bid'ah, the concept of innovation by Dr. Muhammad Tahir al-Qadiri, and also we're studying from his book, Kitab al-Tawhid as well, these books here. The oneness of divine, the book on divine oneness, and then the middle one there, we're going to do that, try to do a condensed version of that in one session next week. And then Kitab al-Bid'ah, we've looked at most of that, alhamdulillah. So this is what we've covered in terms of Bid'ah. The book itself, it's like over what? It's over 450 pages, about 471 pages. And it covers the references, the quotes, the things in more detail than I have. Okay, and I have explained some things that might not be in the book, but inshallah, I hope you can leave a comment or any questions that you have concerning any of this. But I hope, inshallah, you have understood and you've taken from this, and inshallah, you can take it forward and develop it. And you're under no obligation if you don't accept anything from what's been taught, you can reject it and you can take another position. You can go study and see what they say and make your own mind up, right? But this is the position that I take and that I follow, and it's established very clearly in my eyes and in the eyes of our teachers and in the eyes of all these imams that we've mentioned. And I'd rather stick to the tradition that has come to us through all these centuries than go to something that has come about very recently. So hopefully you have understood a lot of this, and inshallah next time what we're going to do is we're going to study the element of veneration and worship in the next session. So if anyone has any questions or anything, you're welcome to ask, or any comments. Okay, if not, there's always the WhatsApp group. There's always the number in there, and you can ask anything, drop any comment when you have something that comes to mind. Inshallah, Allah give us tawfiq, Allah give guidance, Allah give us the best in this world and the next. Allah forgive us for any misunderstandings that we may have. Allah forgive us for any mistakes that we may have made. And Allah forgive us for anything that we may be wrong about. And, we don't claim to be on the absolute truth. We seek guidance. We always seek it. And may Allah give us such tawfiq. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.